Thank you very much for the possibility to speak here, and welcome to everybody. So this is the topic of my presentation that you probably can see on the screen. Comments on the science technology relationships. This will be the topic in a certain sense, at least. You can see that this is a very similar to that of Hans presented. It is not an accident, of course. We have a lot of common ideas and and different fields. Okay, but the emphasis will be different. Okay, so let's first thanks for the introduction, but a very short introduction probably is interesting for you, because you will see my position, from which position I will present this year for you. First of all, I would like to mention that like Srđana Lelasa, I also studied physics and philosophy, and I worked originally as a physicist for a short time, and later on became a philosopher of science. It's interesting just because I think if two people has a kind of similar history, intellectual history, in this case, it's very easy to see the similarity of the ideas, of course. And later on, I became interested in the philosophy of technology. And right now, I'm interested in the philosophy of the internet. This is my main research topic at this moment. Actually, you mentioned that I'm a Department of History and Philosophy of Science at the Eötvös University, but this is the past. Actually, several years ago, the university closed the department, a very stupid policy, of course, yes, and I already retired. But all the things is almost the introduction. And let's see. This is the topics of my presentation. First, I try to speak a little bit about the personal memories of Srđan, and later on the science and technology, and on the science-technology relationship. These are the plan. Let's see what happened. Let's start with the personal memories. Yes, I'm so lucky that I have a different kind of context to meet Srđan. As so many people, of course, I had a meeting with him several times in Dubrovnik, the Philosophy of Science conferences. This was the time about in 1986, between 1986 and 1990. I don't remember exactly. I was there 4 or 5 times, and any time we met there, and it was very interesting for me and very important for me. Of course, this was one of my most important intellectual environments, and very useful and very nice. And of course, it was offered by, in a certain sense, Srđan. So I think he was a very nice host there. So I remember very well his kind and smiling praxis, how he accepted the people there, and together with Kati Wilkes, they were the most important figure, and ensured a kind of very friendly, nice and beautiful environment for study philosophy of science. So in a certain sense, I would say that for me, I would like to thank in this way again and again the support of Srđana Lelasa to my intellectual development, because these conferences were really important for me. Okay, the next one, the next context. Several years later, I took a short time visit in Zagreb at Srđan. So this was 1 or 2 weeks, I don't remember exactly, and we had different kind of discussions at his office, and so we did some kind of conversation, and I was so lucky to know a little bit more personally, and of course I was able to study a little bit philosophical environment, a philosophy in Croatia in this period. So it was very interesting, by the way, for me that if to compare the Croatian and the Hungarian philosophy in that time. It's very funny that I realized, as I remember, that the Croatian philosophy is much more Atlantic oriented. So if you compare the Hungarian, the Hungarian was much more German oriented or something like that in that time. But it was very interesting experience for me. Okay. Okay. The third context, what I would like to mention here, we had a meeting in Boston, at the Boston University. I don't remember exactly when, maybe 1993 or 4 or 5. There was a special conference there. Bob Cohen organized this conference on postmodern science. So it was very unique. I think probably it was not so frequent. It was relatively unique. And somehow I traveled there because I was interested in the postmodern science, of course, and the postmodernity at all. And I was surprised that Srđan was there. Actually, he was not coming from the meeting or conference, but because, as I remember, he had a scholarship there in that time. And he just visited the conference occasionally. But probably he had a position, or he had a visiting scholarship at the Boston University or somewhere else. And it was very nice to meet him there and to have a European colleague there in the American environment. Okay, so this was the first 3 personal context, and of course, later on we continue our being together in the intellectual sphere. From this time, from 2003, 2005, I started to work on such a kind of topics of which Srđan's ideas were important. For example, in this time, and we used to speak with Hans about our ideas on philosophy of science, technology, and so. And Hans mentioned several. I don't know. Do you remember, Hans? You mentioned several times. Okay, your ideas is very similar to Srđan's idea. Please consider it. Please read it and consider it and think about it. So it was very useful, and I did it. So it also was a very important context for me. To be together with Lelasa or Lelasa ideas. Okay, so this was the personal contact, and let's see the next one. This common intellectual field, probably I would name the science and technology, and of course. If you consider science and technology, you have a first impression that technology and science definitely different from each other in the European tradition, at least. For example, as some people told me, okay, science dealings with facts and technology dealings with artifacts. Okay, and very clear. This is completely different, and there is no kind of interaction. Absolutely different. These are separated functioning, separated history, separated philosophy. For a philosophy of science and philosophy of technology is not combined in a certain sense. Praxis, disciplines, and so on. For example, everybody knows that the science somehow based on the episteme in the classical time, and technology on the techne. These are different kind of knowledges, and so on. So if you consider the science and technology, we can speak, at least according to the classical view, the technology as a kind of applied science. So this is a kind of relationship, intimate relationship between technology and science. technology can be considered as applied science. Okay, of course this is a traditional view, and very easy to see a lot of other differences between science and technology. Look at this. Science is dealing with given systems. Technology is created system. Science about episteme, and technology is techne. Science is facts, artifacts. Science has a special situation-free knowledge, and technology has a situation-bound knowledge. And science is dealing with truth, and the technology is dealing with effectiveness. The effectiveness is truth, not the same, of course. Science consider on the focus on the understanding, and technology on the control of the situation. Not the understanding of the situation, but the control of the situation, or something like that. And of course, it's not so. It is a classical or accepted view normally, and there are some objections to these accepted views. And now I try to speak about these objections. Three different kind of objections, field or objections approach. Try to identify, first of all, Srđan's view, and I speak a little bit the postmodern ST or STS movement, Science and Technology Studies movement. It's technoscience. This will be a similar problem, but already Hans mentioned, but the approach is different a little bit. And I try to speak something about my objections to the accepted views. Okay, so these are the main fields what I would like to mention here. Here you can find some sources. Of course, everybody knows Srđan has this two important contribution, a paper in the British Journal for the Philosophy of Science, and his book, as Hans already analyzed this book, or at least, yeah. Now, these are my main sources also, yeah. Okay, let's go further. Yes, Srđan proposal. Let's focus on Srđan's objections to the accepted view. He had a kind of a special position, which means that he was interested in the history and philosophy of experimentation. I think it's very important because, as I know, he studied experimental physics, and he was familiar with the experimentation, and so he was interested in the history and philosophy of experimentation, using Garrison and some other very important guys. And this was a very important position for him. The other position from him, that the science and technology interwoven to each other. But in this interwovenness, of course, the science will remain, the complex will remain science. So it's special kind of things. The interwoven science and technology remains science. Okay, but different science, of course, than earlier. And of course, very interesting also on his view of the so-called non-positivist or I would say hermeneutic and constructivist approach. So somehow, I think it is also very important and very easy to see. For me, it's very easy to see that it's not so difficult to share his views, because my position relatively close to his position in general. Okay, so let's see what was the result of this approach. What he used. This is the natural and artificial intertwine, and so do creating and revealing. In science, where the process is free of any pragmatic purpose, the dynamics ends exactly at the moment when naturalness and artificialness came together. This is important. Naturalness and artificialness came together and feel to each other. Fit to each other. Yeah, I think it's very important, of course. And this slogan, the old slogan, "Science discovers, technology invents," should be modified and must read, "Science discovers because it invents." I think it's very important. Yeah, and finally, as a final conclusion of his famous book, a new setting of places, relations between theory and experiment, hypothesis and evidence, verification and falsification, instrumentalism and realism. He proposed a kind of new relationships, new context for them, and this one very well known thesis of his. Is the final or most important thesis of his view. These four theses that science is not only about what is, but also about what can be. What can be is made visible by doing, not by contemplating. Okay, it's very clear. The second thesis, know-how is a legitimate, constitutive, and indispensable part of the scientific knowledge. Know-how is a part of the scientific knowledge. Science is a genuinely technology as it is ontology. Okay, the activity of producing or making is not merely relevant for science, it is crucial to, but it is crucial, not just relevant, but crucial. Scientists discover as they implement. And of course, again, the last one, that discovery and testing by producing makes know-how and integral part of the scientific theory, and so on and so on. So I think these are very interesting and very important conclusion, and in a certain sense as very important to study in any time, not just from that time. Okay, but I think if we accept as a starting point of this position, of this thesis given by Lelasa, we can think about additional objections to the accepted views on science and technology relation. How? Here, two different kind of additional objections I would like to mention in the later part of the next part of my presentation. The first group of objections based on the philosophy of technology. I think it is not so trivial what kind of philosophy of technology we accepted, and from this point of view, this is a kind of continuation, if you like, a criticism of Srđan's position, because in Srđan's position he used a different kind of philosophies of technologies, but depending, sometimes uses this one, sometimes that one, sometimes Heidegger, sometimes Donati, sometimes everybody else. But probably it would have meaning to focus on the details and focus on the organized philosophy of technology, and to reconsider again the same thing. Okay. The other possible problem is that other additional dimension is that it probably is not enough to consider the history of experimentation. It's very important, but not enough. Probably we should have to apply an essentially broader historical context. I would propose this one, and which I call it history of the whole human culture. I think this is very important because using this position we can understand better the accepted view and its criticism. Okay, The third thing also that it is necessary to reconsider many times and again and again the role of philosophy on these problems. So how can we, this is a very crucial thing for me also, how can we describe the technology, science, philosophy relationships? So I think if you would like to understand that science-technology relationships, we should have to apply as a third agent the philosophy. So we should have to consider this relationship system of these three things together. It's not enough to consider two, but we should have to include also the philosophy as a kind of agent in this situation. So this is what I would like to propose. Yeah, all of these things that I proposed here, I made it. So a little bit later on, I will speak a little bit later, but I think these kind of objections category I created, and I will speak a little bit more the details. And there is also a new version, a new additional objections. This is the postmodernity. I think it's very clear that I think in Lela's book, the postmodern category is not categories. Postmodernity, the value system of postmodernity is appears, but not in a direct way. So I think it would be necessary to consider the postmodern worldview and accept its important position of important consequences of this position. So this is the so-called studies problem. So we will speak a little bit later on the studies problem. Okay. So in the rest part of my presentation, I try to consider first this philosophy of technology and the relations between technology, philosophy, and science dilemma. And later on, I try to speak something about the studies methodologies. Okay, so these are the two additional things that I would like to mention. Okay, so let's start the first. I think we should have to focus first of all, we should have to focus on the nature of technology. I think this is a very important lack of a lot of analysis of the science-technology relationship, that the nature of technology is unclear, and how the people's and the significance of technology in the human life is also unclear. Not just in the case of philosophy of science or to consider science, but in a very general way. I think it's very important thing that the role and the significance of technology within the human being or in the creation of human existence, I think sometimes misunderstood, or it's not emphasized and not considered in the right way. Okay, so I think this is very crucial. So I think from other point of view, I would say that the philosophy of technology or the understanding the nature of technology is a little bit much more important than the understanding the nature of science in a certain sense. But you will see what I mean. Okay, so let's speak about a little bit. How can we understand the nature of technology? Normally, I think we should have to start at Aristotle. Especially the Aristotelian philosophy of nature. In the Aristotelian philosophy of nature, Aristotle makes a clear distinction between natural and artificial beings. So I think these are a very, very crucial and very important things in the Aristotelian philosophy of nature and the Aristotelian view at all. The natural and artificial being. And the naturals and actually the artificial beings is a kind of beings which is created, which is moved from outside, which is not moved by their nature. But in a certain sense, I would say that the technology can be considered as a kind of kind of methodology to create artificial beings. So it's the technology. I think if you would like to understand technology, this means that we should have to identify the human methodology to create artificial beings. This is what I call technology. And there are a lot of different kind of approaches to these things, of course. There are a lot of philosophy of technology, and it would be important to compare them. And also very important thing that every technology, has also a kind of anthropological position. Every technology can be considered as a technology of humanity. In my view, the humans are not natural beings. Humans are artificial beings. If we are not create our nature, if we don't create our own culture or own world, in this case, we will not be human beings, but some kind of natural beings, some kind of animals. So from this point of view, I would say that the technology is the only tool for the human self-creation. I think it's also very important. And this is the meaning, this is the explanation. This is the explanation that the technology is so important for the human culture, for the human being. From this point of view, it's very easy to see that the technology is much more important, much more significant than the science, because the people or human beings should have to create itself or himself, and this is the first step. And of course, the understanding of the world somehow is a kind of next step. Just okay, you will see, we will see soon. Okay. So these are the principles on the understanding of the nature of technology, in my view. Yeah. Look at this. Based on these principles, it is necessary, or it's possible to create a kind of definition of technology, a very general definition, which is valid from the primitive tool making to the internet use. So very, very complicated and very, very broad things. And in a certain sense, I would say that if you consider the technology in this way, this means that the technology is a specific form or aspect of human agency. Every human agency has a technological aspect, I would say. So, and also very important that if you consider the essence of technology, this means that the essence of technology is a kind of human control, a realization of human control over a technological situation. Realization of human control over a technological situation. This means that because of this human agency, because the influence of human agency and control, the course of the outcome of the situation is no longer governed by natural constraints, but by specific human goals. Which means that the human control of technological situations yields a kind of artificial beings as outcome, not a. So the situation, from the situation coming some kind of artificial beings, not a kind of natural beings. Okay, and okay. So if you consider the technological situation, I use the concept of technological situation. Also very interesting to see that the technical situation has different kind of components, and these are what I mentioned here, and so on. But it are very complicated things what we can use. Yeah, and okay. Also very important that as I mentioned that the essence of technology kind of control realization of human control over a situation. But of course, the control sometimes successful, sometimes not successful, and if something was successful in a given period, later on it will be not successful. This means that the technology has a finiteness. The technology has no eternal life or eternal being. The technology has a finite C story. And by the way, it's also very interesting. I would like to mention that this means that all the artificial beings produced by technologies are finite, and if you consider the human beings as artificial being, this means that the human finiteness is coming from the finiteness of technology. Okay, so it is a, I would say this is a kind of anti-Heideggerian position. Okay, but I think it has a meaning, but I don't want to continue with this story. Okay, so let's consider again a little bit. Okay, a little bit more about the philosophy of technology. I mentioned that if we accept the technology such a thing, what I mentioned, that the human control over a technological situation as a product of artificial beings, in this case, we can realize that there is a very fundamental question which is included all of the philosophy of technologies. This is the relationship between technology and society. Relationship between technology and society. What does it mean? It has two conclusions, two dimensions. The first is that the technology has an autonomous or a non-autonomous or human-controlled being. Technology has a self-development or self-movement, or is completely human-controlled. And the other things that using the technology, we can produce values, or it is not necessary. So we can decide about the value-ladenness of technology or value-free use of technologies. I think all of these are the two most important things which are consequence of the relationship between technology and society. From this position, 4 typical versions of philosophy of technology is coming. These are the classifications came from Andrew Feinberg. Feinberg proposed these 4 different kind of categories for the philosophies of technology: determinism, instrumentalism, substantivism, and critical theory. As I see, Srđan, most of the cases somehow use this kind of substantivism and instrumentalism or something like that, but I think it is not. I think it seems to be his use is not really consequent in a certain sense. Okay, I don't want to go into the details, but I just would like to mention that if you accept these versions, of course, one of the most useful things to consider the technologies value-laden and under human control, and all of these things together, the critical theory of technology, which is very meaningful, I think, as I think, much more meaningful than the Heideggerian or the other things. Okay. Okay. So there is a very important thing that it's interesting probably that if you consider technology society relations, it's also there is a very interesting experience. This means that we can declare that the human conditions are technological product. Okay, that's everybody knows this. So this is the idea of the technological determinism or something like that. So the human conditions are technological products. Okay, there are a lot of arguments for this. And the other one, if you consider technology, it's very easy to see that technology is a social product. So this is a kind of circular determination, circular causation. What we have. we can identify that the human conditions are technological products or the technologies are social products. So this means that we have this circular causation, which is an excellent sign of the complexity of the situation. So this means that one or the other position is not enough. We should have to speak a kind of complex interactive system, and this complexity, the analysis of complexity, is very, very interesting, very important. So this means that instead of the situation, probably we should have to speak about the human praxis at all, because the human praxis is much more complex than the earlier categories, and so on and so on. And as a conclusion, we should have to conclude again that the technological aspect of human praxis, a lot of very important things, that every technology can be considered as a kind of aspect of human agency or human praxis, and so on and so on. Okay, so I think I have perhaps several minutes more. Yeah. Okay. If you consider the human praxis, it's very easy to see that the human praxis has a history, and in this history, the human history, or the complete human history, can be considered the situation of technology, philosophy, and sciences. Very easy to see that the human culture, the technology has a primacy. The primacy, if you consider the technology in that way, as I mentioned, this means that the control over a concrete situation, over the technological situation, we should have to control a concrete situation. Okay. Later on, many thousand years later, many hundred years later, when we had a different kind of technologies, we were able to create philosophy. Philosophy is a very special thing, because the philosophy is not. It is interested in the validity of a kind of praxis, the validity of a kind of knowledge, not in a situation, not in this or that or a special situation, but the philosophy tried to create a word, which means that the philosophy is a methodology to create words from situations. So this means that we have to know the validity of an idea, not in a concrete situation, but in every situation. So this is the business of philosophy, and we would like to discover the world. We would like to discover the human culture, build up a human culture, which is not just a kind of situation bond, but a lot of situation free knowledge. Okay, so this is a very important praxis. So first we had technology, later on we had philosophy, and as a combination of these two things, we were able to create sciences. I think science is somehow as a kind of combination of these two things. I would say in this way, the science somehow a kind of technology plus philosophy, which means that we have a lot in the sciences. We have a lot of situation bond validity of knowledge, situation bond valid knowledge, and we should have to create a methodology to generalize it. We have a knowledge about the I don't know about the movement and the influence of the movement by different bodies and blah blah blah, and we should have to generalize it. And if we can generalize, in this case, we will have science. but the generalization is the business of philosophy. I think this is a very important thing that we should have. So, of course, it's probably no, I don't want to go into the, and of course, we if you have already science, which is a kind of technological, philosophical component, and or praxis, and of course they are mixed to each other and create a unit. But we can remove from the science the technological component, or we try to remove from the science the philosophical component. In this case, we have different kind of approaches. Okay, so this means that if you consider all of these distinctions between the scientific and technical views, we can declare that the philosophy is the methodology to transfer from one side to the other side. How can we create situation-bound knowledge to situation-free knowledge? We can use a nice philosophy, a different philosophy, by the way. How can we create situation-bound knowledge to situation-free knowledge? How can we use the effectivenesses through? How can we create from control situation understanding, and so on and so on. So in any cases, I think that philosophy will transform this kind of these technological components to the scientific component. So in a certain sense, I would say, and of course it's much more complicated. There are a lot of other things. And any cases, this is the situation. We should have to use philosophy if we would like to transform this to that technology to science. At least it's possible to speak in this way. Okay, this is also a kind of probably not so interesting, but you know, it's interesting in a certain sense, because probably it's interesting that the experiment. Look at the experimentation. Experiment has a technological character, of course, but it has a scientific goals. So it's so somehow and of course how can we the technical and scientific goals? Of course, we can use a kind of philosophy of experimentation. For the modern, the theory and other things, okay, it's not so interesting now. So also we can speak about different kind of simplification of the scientific approaches, and we have kind of possibilities. Okay, somehow something like that. So probably and finally 2 minutes about. I would like to speak about the other additional objections to the accepted views. So until now I wanted to describe this one, and now I try to describe this postmodernity problem. How can we apply this? Okay, of course this is the concept of technoscience. And of course, it's very easy to see that, yeah. So I think I don't want to go into the details. Hans already mentioned many dimensions. Probably it's interesting for you that the history of the technoscience concept is not so easy to see. The terms coming from a Belgian philosopher in the 70s. And Bachelard used the concept earlier, and the main hero in this field is Bruno Latour. His Science in Action, one of the most important book in this field, where he considered the science and technology relationship versus technoscience. So this is a very important book, and considered a lot of very interesting conclusions. Okay. this is an important thing what I would like to mention, that because Hans mentioned that there is a weak and a strong concept of technoscience. So, another other classification came from Barnes. Barnes proposed three categories. He is speaking about technoscience as a version of science. It is a monistic ontology, which means that that technology and science are inseparable, but the whole conglomerate it has the characteristics of scientific. And the other one, technoscience is an intersection of technology and science. Also, this means that there is a much more complicated ontology. Technology, science, and technology existing together. And also, there is another possibility when we can accept that no science anymore and no technology anymore, that technoscience is a new entity, and so on and so. So, and of course, it has all of them has meaning, and all of them has some practical versions. Okay, actually, I don't want to go into the details again. The ENT, actor network theory, is a kind of theory of these things, of such kind of society on which technoscience exists. And but this is the final idea what I would like to propose here. What kind of philosophical approaches can be found to approach to the technosciences? There is a hermeneutic and social constructivist and postmodern. Okay, and all of them is very interesting, but I have no time to go into the details. But what I would like to mention, this is the last one, it is the studies problem. I think it's very important to see the science and technology studies is a very new intellectual tool to consider all of these things and the science and technology problem, which means that the studies has a postmodern characteristic. Studies is a postmodern methodology, which means that the studies there is no given fixed methodology to consider situations, but the collection of approaches, collection of methodologies, and so on and so on, different kind of things. And actually, it's a plurality of methodologies, and time to time, the methodology will be different. I think this is a very important thing, and very interesting to speak about it. Okay, the technoscience has a history. One of the most important things, John Pixton idea. According to Pixton, the technoscience is a very, very old thing. Actually, it is not a product of the postmodernity. It was a part of the modern science and technology also. Okay, and this is the real last one. We can speak about, but if we are speaking about technoscience, in this case, we should have to speak about philoscience based on my earlier idea, because as I mentioned you, if you consider the science, technology, philosophy relationships, in this case, it's very easy to see that in this coalition, I would say that between technology and philosophy, in this coalition, the component of the concrete technologies, technological situation, the concrete philosophies can define the validity and the characteristics of the given science. And the technoscience means that somehow the technological component has a much more important characteristic, much more important role in this coalition. It is, but if we can accept this, in this case, we can accept the opposition. That in many cases, the philosophical component can have a crucial role, can have a much more important role than the technological one. And in this case, we can speak about philoscience and technoscience also. Okay, and this means that it depends on the concrete historical, social conditions that we are speaking. This or that version of technoscience, or a very simple way, we can conclude that if we are speaking about science in a very general way, the inner structure of scientific knowledge remains obscured. Science is always a fusion of technological and philosophical component, and the result in the formation of a science matter, a concrete socio-historical form of science. There is no science in a very general way, according to this view. Is any time the science a concrete socio-historical form. Yeah, and of course the task is to discover its technological and philosophical component and understanding the science better in a given concrete age. Thank you for your kind attention.